Okay, for today's demo, I was going to do Skinner a Sutton Slice 3 different ways. Now, the Sutton Slice was developed by a fellow named of Paul Sutton many years ago. I'm going to show you first the way I was taught initially, and then we'll look at some variations that I've developed on that. Not dramatic, but they are some interesting variations. So start with a rubber stamp. This is standard rubber stamp. Now, I prefer rubber stamps that are not backing, not back. That is, they don't have a wood block behind them. They are just a freestanding rubber stamp. The reason for that is it makes the step after this one really easy. If you don't do that, it gets tough. So what we do is we take, in this case, I'm going to take some black clay, and you just push it into the stamp. You don't use water, you don't use a release agent because you want the clay to stay in the stamp, not easily release, which is another reason that you don't want, that you want a stamp that is not backed, so that you can kind of peel it off instead of pulling it off. And I am just smooshing this clay into the stamp, taking little pieces and smushing it in, because it's easier to make sure that I get it in everywhere and get it. You want it all the way down into the bottom of the deepest parts of the stamp. So as you see, as I'm doing this, I can get down in there. I've tried using a brayer when I do this, but typically the brayer tends to pull the clay out of the stamp and you want it to stay inside the stamp. So I have quit using a brayer to do this. I'm just found that doing it by hand gets it into the places I want it to get into. I'm not going to go too far with this, because watching me embed this in the clay is just so much fun, I know. But give you an idea what it's going to look like, how it's going to work. You put about that much in there. You can see it's in there pretty good. And I've pressed down as much as I can. And yes, you could put a sheet of plastic or something over the top, a deli sheet if you've got one handy, which I have lost, and then roll over it and probably have a better luck. But the next stage, because this rubber is baked at high temperature, you don't cut it easy with a knife. And so what you want to do then is come in and very carefully and come in at a low angle and just kind of shave off the polymer clay, leaving the clay in the stamp. And you want to, like I said, you want to do it at a low angle. Come in too sharp, you're going to press too hard and end up cutting the clay off actually pulling the clay out of the stamp itself. So by going in at a shallow angle, and you can see there's locations where the clay is well embedded in the stamp. Now, sometimes, as you see me doing right now, you've got to hold the stamp down because as you cut through this, it does tend to pull things away and cause the stamp to move. But do it, if you're careful, do it enough, do it little pieces at a time. You can eventually get to where you've got a reasonably clean stamp. I got to keep my hand out of the way so you can see what I'm doing, which with big clumsy hands is not always easy. I'm going to try and get the last little bit here. Now, it's not really clean at this point, and so I'm going to come in, again, at a low angle, and just try and scrape right along the surface. If you don't do it well, you get little fine pieces of black clay in this case on the surface of the stamp, not embedded, I'm not talking about embedded down in, but they're sitting on the surface. And if they're on the surface, they will appear on the clay in the next stage. So that's why I'm going in and very carefully shaping this thing. And you can see I've got a few places where it's still kind of stuck there a little more than I want. But to do this, get it all cleaned up, really nice. So you see I don't quite have it yet. So we'll try a few more slices through that thing because I think that flower should be a little cleaner than it is, but it doesn't seem to be cleaning up much. Okay. So let me assume that's good. Then what you want to do is take another sheet of a different color clay, and this time I'm going to use gold clay. And I'm taking it through about a medium setting on my pasta machine. This doesn't matter too much. It's a function of what you're looking for your final product. But you want something that's a big enough sheet that is going to cover the piece you've put down. So you see I put the gold clay on there like that. Press it down a little bit, kind of make sure it's well adhered. Now I'm going to turn the whole thing over. And again, press down. This time I do want the gold clay to stick to my tile. Because what I'm going to do is peel this rubber stamp off the gold. And as I'm doing that, I'm checking, make sure that the black is coming out of all of the spots. And if I see one that isn't done, since I'm rolling it off, I can go back and put it back, press it in again in that spot, and then continue to peel that clay off until I get the full transfer of the clay onto, or the black clay onto the gold. And that is the basic idea behind the Sutton Slice. It gives you a nice raised image, function of whatever your black or whatever your clay was, your rubber stamp, whatever your rubber stamp was. And then you've got this nice, it's slightly raised, has a nice little relief to it. It gives you a beautiful contrast for your whatever piece you're gonna make. And my system is giving me funny messages, and so you can see I've got a nice image there. That's a nice piece to work with. Well, having done that and played that game a few times, I thought, gee, what else can I do with it? Those of you who know me are probably familiar with that's what I end up doing a lot is, gee, how far can I take this? So I decided, and I can't actually find the stamp I wanted to use, so I will use the same stamp all over again. The next thing I tried was if I take something you want to do is make sure your stamp is clean. I got a little piece of something in there. So bear with me while I clean that out, because if I don't get it cleaned out of there, it's going to transfer onto my clay instead of doing what I want. Okay. So now I'm going to take the same rubber stamp, and I'm going to do the same technique. And these scraps are just nice for that because it doesn't matter what you're working with. And I'm going to press them back into the clay. So, and again, you get to watch me do this. It's just a whole lot of fun, I know. But pressing in carefully with my thumbs, firmly with my thumbs, actually, trying to make sure I get it absolutely everywhere. If I ever find my deli sheets, I might try something, but then I generally don't like to try new ideas for the first time in front of an audience. I really like to do the experiments outside ahead of time and see what's going to happen so that I've got an idea and work out some of the kinks myself. Because the first time it never goes exactly the way you think it's going to go. Moving on. I'm continuing to press this black clay into my rubber stamp. Trying to remember, oh, there I am, how far I want to go with it. This time I'm going to have to go a lot further. And this next one, what I normally do is use a tree or some image, some obvious image in the background, but failing to have that, I couldn't find that particular stamp for this occasion. I'm just going to go ahead with what I've been doing. And pressing in. Now the next step is fairly obvious, but that's okay. Again, I'm going to press that down firmly, firm as I can. It's not helping that much. Get it well embedded into the stamp. And you come along and you start shaving it off. I'm going to be a little more aggressive in my shaving this time because you've seen me do this once and you don't need to watch me go through the details. And take it cautiously again. I've got a little more clay here this time than I did last time because I've got a larger image that I want to use. But we will press on. I've tried slicing the whole thing off at once. I generally end up catching a piece of the clay and pulling a bunch of it out of the stamp. That's not good. So that's why I'm doing this with short slices and working my way back to the edge closest to you. So I can get a better cut. Yes, my stamp is moving on me, but I think if I'm careful, I will be okay. Keep going here, shaving as I go. Rather aggressive with my shaving. Don't get aggressive with it. You should not get in a hurry when you're doing this. But you people don't want to sit there and watch me shave clay. Got a piece that looks like it came out, so I'm going to try and put some clay back in there. Nice thing about this technique, if something messes up, you can always go back and do a patch. As long as you get it, catch it before you do the final steps, you're okay. And make sure I'm using the sharp edge of the blade. And kind of shave that off. You don't want the blade flat on the clay or on the rubber stamp. You want the blade angled a little bit because the blade is beveled at the edge and you want to get most of the sharp-ish part of the blade right on the rubber stamp. And if you do it flat, then the bevel keeps the actual pointy edge, sharp edge, from touching the clay. So now you see I've got fairly good image again. Shaves off real nice. This time, what I have done is I have taken a blue to gold Skinner blend, sort of a sunset type of look to it. And I'm going to put that on the clay, on the rubber stamp, and do the same thing. And I'm careful, this time I'm careful about how I'm putting it on the stamp because I want to make sure that I get the image on the clay in the position I want it to. And obviously this is much better if you've got trees or a building or something, giraffes in the background to kind of give you a nice sunset look to it. Or you can use any other gradient blend, skinner blend that you prefer. I just started this with sunset looks and cherry blossoms, and it came out strikingly lovely. Okay, that should be a good transfer. Now, once again, we peel things off. Okay, pick a different corner, peel things off, and you can see that didn't exactly stick. And you can see things are not sticking well. So I will continue to do this process of putting it down, pressing it again, making sure things are transferring smoothly. And you can see by rolling the stamp off, I'm actually helping it. I'm causing the little grooves to open up and drop the clay out of the stamp and onto my background piece. And when you're done, you get a nice thing like this. Which is a great piece, a great way to back up or to make a focal piece on a necklace or something of that nature. I'll come back and do that in a minute, or I could. Yeah, let me start and do that right now. It won't be shouldn't be too hard to do. I take my black clay a little bit here, run it through the pasta machine once or twice, and I get it nice thickness to it, and so it's somewhat soft and flexible. You need to decide on a shape here. So we'll pick up there and bring the sides in, say to there. Yeah, I'm just kind of free-forming this thing. Bring that one in there. And then scrape it off with my blade. Put it on back piece for mounting. And again, I'm going to press down a little bit, make sure it's well adhered. And just cut it along the same outline. If I can see what I'm doing. Bring that edge up just a touch here because it didn't come out exactly the way I liked. Now then, this thing I would probably mount actually on silver. Got a piece of silver around here. I don't see my silver standing around. I'd mount it on a piece of silver clay and then put a silver border around it, and I would have a decent focal piece for a necklace. Now, the one I really wanted to play with, the one I thought was really nice when he did it. Starting off with, in this case, I'm going to take something different. This is actually a texture sheet. You probably can't see. I don't know if putting something behind is going to help or not. But it's called Stones. And it's a texture sheet that kind of looks like, you can see it as probably a stone wall or something of that nature. And what I did this time, just to be different, because I always have to be different, is So I took my Skinner blend. This time I'm using, sorry, I just grabbed the sharp edge of the blade. Now I have red clay. I'm not really. I did not hurt myself. I'm going to take it down a little bit thinner than what I had before. And they don't really need it that thick. And this blend is, I don't have a lot of it at the moment. So what I've got is a black to silver blend. So I'm going to put that on here. And I'm going to press it into the clay. Like I did before, only this time I'm leaving the sheet in its entirety. I'm not putting in little pieces because I want to maintain the gradient that goes from, actually it's graphite because I'm using Primo. I want the gradient to go from the graphite to the silver. And if I try to put it in pieces, I can never achieve that. Trust me, I know I've tried it. The computer keeps asking for attention. One of the problems with older computers. Like old people, they get cranky. You should know I'm an old person, I get cranky. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm actually seeing air bubbles that I'm needing to press out. So I'm being careful to get those out. Watching for them as I go. There's one running off to the edge. Black clay trying to slip into the picture. No, you guys, your turn's over. It helps if you start near the center and work toward the edges, or start on one edge and work towards the other, putting more pressure in the middle than you do near the edges to kind of get the air, make sure the air gets out of there. Still got air in a few places. You'll see that not everything is down as smooth or as flat as you really want it to be. That actually looks pretty good at the moment. I'm hoping I've got it in there. So now you can start seeing some of the stone texture in that sheet. And I'm going to again do the same thing of shaving this thing. Only since it's plastic, I've got to be a little more careful. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. And not to shave off the plastic. It's fairly tough plastic still because it was heat and pressure and then pressed into a mold. So there is some some strength to it. And if you don't get things in there entirely, they will pull out like that guy just did. Wherever I caught him, and I'm going to try and get him back in there, which never works. I should know that by now. And again, back to shaving. Small slices, small, careful slices as you do this, especially with a plastic sheet. Rubber stamps aren't quite as problematic as a plastic sheet of plastic is. But if you're careful, you can get this thing shaved off reasonably well. You can see I'm doing a little bit of a saw arrangement on this, trying not to put too much stress on the clay itself. And if you do, you pull up a whole lot of stuff like I just did there. I'm going to try and put that guy back into the stamp and see if I can get him down again. Here we go. He's down. Okay, this time I am going to try something else to see if I can get some more pressure on that. That's still not working. Don't really want to use, I have to press on. So holding the clay down this time as I'm slicing through it. So I'm slicing under my fingers, not through my fingers, just so you know. You can actually feel the blade slide under my finger. And that is helping me to get a cleaner slice through here. Because now I'm actually pushing the clay into the sheet of plastic as I'm going. Got one or two spots that didn't do it, but then it's me not doing it carefully. And you should never rush when you're doing this because you will always make a mistake. But again, careful slices. Keep your fingers clean. I'm going to have to focus on what I'm doing here for a few minutes, folks. I'm not talking, it's because I'm focused real hard on trying to get this thing to come off the way I want it to. That didn't work. The whole thing's got to go back. Pressed in. One more time. Press him in with fingernails this time. One should not hurry when doing this. It never works. Few pieces and patch up a few holes I've got here and there. By the way, patching doesn't work too well because the clay tends to stick to your finger. Okay, that's working better. And we're getting it. Now, once I get this shaved off well and cleaned, there we go. Most of it's shaved off. Got a few pieces I want to try and patch up because I really would like some clay on a few spots here. Like I say, the clay is going to stick to your finger, not to plastic sheet, which is always a problem. Press it back in. Using my fingernail is better than using my finger because it doesn't adhere to my fingernail as easily as it does to my finger. See how well I did with that? And hold it down while I shave it. Okay. It's not as clean as I would like, but you can see the idea. I've got a lot of places in here where I've got that stone texture now on the plastic sheet. Clean up my workspace a little bit so I don't create a bigger mess when I try the next step. Now then, I did this with the black closest to me and the silver away from me. I'm going to turn this one over so the black is now away from me and the silver is close to me. And I get slightly OCD at times. Sorry about that, folks. I got a few spots that I really want to put a piece of clay in, as they really, really deserve a piece of clay. And so I'm going to take some clay and poke them in there. And you're wondering, why doesn't he use that pointy stick that he's got? That is an excellent question. I think I'll try that. Put him in with that. Press him in with that. That looks a lot better. My fingernail to kind of press things down. And then hold it down while I slice it off. A lot of those places got filled in. Okay. I'm taking this Skinner blend and I'm going, what was black is going to get silver on top, and what was silver is going to get black on top. Now, I've tried this in different orientations. I've tried 45 degrees and whatnot. This one with the flipping it all the way around seems to give me the results I like the best. It turned out to be quite striking when I pull it off right. And let me put that in there well. And again, I'm going to flip it over, press it down, make sure things are in place. And I'm going to try this trick once more, pulling this thing is stiff, so it doesn't always work. I'm going to have to flex it more than I really like to get it to break loose. Well, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, things cease working. And it did not transfer. That was very unkind. I am going to try putting a little more clay on the back of this thing, and this time I'm going to use black because I don't have anything else I can work with. I may have made my top sheet a little too thin, which is my assumption at this point. And I'm going to assume that the black is going to be a background and should not show up, except maybe as a highlight around some of these pieces. And I'm asking myself, how am I really going to pull this off? Because that's not going to work. Well, we're going to have to just do it this way. Let me get those off there. Yeah, I can be careful. Pull most of those guys off so that we don't have those guys presenting a problem for me. Okay, once more into the breach. Playing with the clay, trying to get it on there. Just when you thought you knew what you were doing, the demo goes sideways. Oh, that's what I can do. I'll cheat. I'll just turn that guy over. Now I've got a clean surface to work with. I'm gonna take some of the blend and put it in a few spots, see if I can kind of get some of the color I'm looking for. Lighter, more silver stuff up top. And then back black, filling in here and there. Well, they've got the gradient up there. Okay. Just another piece here. And I'm going to press that in firmly again. Take this guy out of the way so I don't mess him up. And once more, go back to shaving this thing off and seeing if I can get it to work right this time. I'm hoping that my Skinner blend shows up. Because when it works, it is really, really nice. I'm hoping the black doesn't show up too much. We'll see. Okay. A couple more slices here. Shouldn't rush it, but I am. Because I'm aware that I'm wasting a whole lot of time doing this. Okay. Now then, again, I had black closest to me and silver away from me. So I'm going to reverse the process. The black away from me, silver towards me. So that I've got the stones with the gradient going one way and the background with the gradient going the other way. Shave some of the stuff off that messed up before. Flip it over like I said. Press it down into the tile. Make sure it stays this time. And again, we try to peel this thing off. Well, I didn't get it all on the tile. Okay, now we're on the tile. Now then to see how many of these guys not well on the tile. Sink the tile. It's possible that I should have tried to release on plastic because it's not releasing from. They're not releasing. Well, folks, this was nice when I did it at home. You try to do it for a demo and it just doesn't work. Going to end up ruining my texture sheet trying to get this to work, which is not good. Well, you're gonna have to imagine how this looks because I don't think it's gonna come out really the way it normally does. Well, sorry about that. That one failed. You can get an idea. So you can see the stones are light on this end and dark on that and dark on that end and light on this. And if I dig around a little bit, I might find a piece where I actually did that. And you can see it. It comes out really nice looking when you do that. I don't know what happened this time. I'll have to go back and practice some more. First time I did it, this is one of the pieces I made. You can see it's a beautiful image, came out really nice. I just put it on a backing of black clay, put a little rolled edge of black clay around it, and I've got a really nice looking piece here. Anyway, those are the Sutton Slice techniques I wanted to show today. Let me stop the recording. Somewhere I've got the recording, and I will